Joining us on the Fox News Rundown is Congressman Jim Jordan, a Republican representing the 4th District in Ohio. He's chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, a member of the House Oversight Committee, which is important, which we'll get to with former President Biden and the controversy there. We're going to start, of course, with what happened in Boulder, Colorado, and the investigation there. First of all, Congressman, thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, Dave.
So Sunday, the attack on the peaceful protests of those who want the hostages released out of Gaza. Now we know that he was here illegally. We can get into that angle. But here he's chanting Free Palestine, and it's not that unlike what happened at the Capitol Jewish Museum.
Yeah, no, it's a sad, unfortunate trend we're seeing. It's, just of these terrible events, evil events. But I think the environment the left is kind of fostered and promoted is what leads to some of this terrible stuff. You got what's going on in college campuses where the left just teaches all kinds of crazy anti-Semitic stuff and tolerates all kind of anti-Semitic activity. We saw that in these college campuses over the last several years. You got the left in there, almost just creating this moral equivalence between the actions of Israel, defending themselves after October 7th and saying Hamas is, it's just crazy. And then, of course, you add to it the visa overstay issue, what the Biden administration did for 4 years when they systematically, deliberately, intentionally just opened the border and let 10 million people come in, and then no enforcement of people who overstay their visa, whether it's a tourist visa, a student visa, what have you. So I think all that together creates the climate where we see these terrible things happen with the embassy, the 2 deaths of the Israeli embassy personnel in D.C., what happened to Governor Shapiro's home, and of course, the latest thing in Boulder.
Both of these things, let's get into the anti-Semitism first with what's happening on college campuses. What do you think ought to be done? Because obviously those on the left say, look, that's free speech. The students are allowed to be doing that.
Well, we did this. We sent letters to Secretary Blinken and Secretary Mayorkas in the last administration, last Congress, after this crazy stuff where they took over took over the buildings in Columbia and different things they were doing.
Right.
We said, are any of these people who have been charged with criminal activity? So that should at least be a line that's drawn. Any of these people involved in criminal activity, were they here on a student visa? And Mayorkas didn't answer our question. We sent him a letter. Now Blinken, and then we sent a letter to Blinken saying, if any were, have their visas been rescinded and they've been sent home? And Blinken returned, at least responded and said, we don't know of anything like that, because he didn't know, because Mayorkas hadn't passed that information on. So again, that to me seems where you should start, but the previous administration wouldn't even answer our letter.
The current one, though, is Secretary of State Marco Rubio, very involved in trying to revoke the visas, deport some of these people.
That is the right approach.
And they even want to stop some foreign students from coming in.
Well, that's why you have vetting. Yeah, if students want to really come here and learn, and God bless them, okay. But if they're, that's why you vet people. That's why you look into it. That's why there's a process to make sure you're not having crazy guys like this individual in Colorado.
Now, this suspect in Colorado came here on a tourist visa, and that expired. He got work authorization under the Biden administration. That expired, which means he overstayed his welcome and is here illegally. He had applied for asylum. Those are not necessarily the people who come across the border that we saw, the gotaways and all that. This is a little different.
Yeah, they still should have, there should have been some consequence for someone not following the law. But with the Biden administration, I think they were so focused on making it easier for people to come in the country, they probably didn't even take the time to focus on this. But you got to do all of it. I believe the Trump administration is. Kristi Noem as our Secretary of Homeland Security, Tom Homan, I think they are. And then one of the things we've done in this in the legislation to deal with the border situation, not exactly on point with the visa overstays, but in the big, beautiful bill that came out of the part that came from Judiciary Committee, we allocate resources for 10,000 more ICE agents. We allocate resources for more detention space, so people who do try to come in, you make sure they're not released into the country.
We're running out of space, right? I mean, aren't we, with the number of people detained in these raids that we want to deport, they need more facilities.
That's why we've allocated the resources we did in the legislation.
This legislation, as you know, now that it's in the Senate, I want you to hear from one of your colleagues, Senator Rand Paul. He's one of those in the Senate who does not yet support the bill that you passed in the House.
I can't be on record as being one who supports increasing the debt by $5 trillion. I think that's irresponsible.
Now, he also says that to offset the tax cuts which he supports, there is something else in the bill related to border security.
Increasing spending for the military and for the border, $300 billion. That's actually more than all the DOGE cuts that we've found so far. So something doesn't really add up here.
Now, President Trump posted on Truth Social that, Senator Paul's a no on everything, has crazy ideas. The people of Kentucky, his home state, can't stand him.
Yeah, well, I will tell you specifically on the resources allocated to maintain border security, which President Trump's now got under control. Initially, there was a request, I think, for $110 billion coming from our committee. We got that down to $80 billion. So we did reduce that because we think you don't need quite as much as they initially thought, as the administration initially thought. And then we also, with different fees we're charging people who do apply for visas, who come into the country, we took the approach that the taxpayers of this country shouldn't have to pay for border security. It should be the people coming here on visas. And so we actually balance it out. So we took the approach in our committee. We want to spend the money wisely, not as much as was initially asked for. And the administration agreed with us when we worked through this process. And we also created some revenue from the people who were coming to our country on a visa. So we think that's good. Overall, though, this bill's good.
Okay.
I wish it had more savings. I get where Senator Paul and Senator...
They say it's going to balloon the debt and the deficit.
I see where they're coming from. We do need more savings, but we also got to get the votes to pass it. And I've said this on the House floor, said it many times since, it's a good bill because the left hates it. I mean, they do.
Okay,
They don't like it because it cuts taxes, lets families keep more of their money. They don't like it because it actually makes sure the border stays secure. They don't like it because it makes able-bodied adults who are getting your tax money in our social welfare system, it makes them go work. Imagine that. They got to do something.
Well, they say it's going to kick millions out of their health coverage.
Totally false.
Take away all the food assistance.
Totally false. It says to able-bodied adults, if you're getting Medicaid, you got to work. Medicaid was designed for people with disabilities, single moms, kids. That's who it was designed for. If you're an able-bodied adult, we're not taking it away from you. We're just saying you got to work, for goodness sake. Everyone else has to work in the world. That is just a fundamental principle. That's good for taxpayers. That's good for our economy. More importantly, it's good for that person. And finally, the other thing that the left hates in this bill is get school choice. Moms and dads have the ability now to pick where their kid can go to school through these foundations where they get money into the foundation. It's going to help parents send their kid to the school that's going to help their child get the education that's good for them. So that's why the left hates it. And I think it's going to promote economic growth. I mean, the numbers are good right now. We saw the Atlanta Fed numbers yesterday were really good. You've seen that consumer confidence is up, inflation's down, unemployment's low. I think you're starting to see the Trump economy begin to happen.
Now, if the Senate makes big changes in order to mollify Senator Paul or Senator Johnson or some of the other Republicans who don't like it as it is it possible that the House would reject it? I mean, is it possible that this bill fails?
No, it's going to pass. We have to. I always say we make the job of being in office in Congress or in politics. We make it too complicated. It's pretty simple. What'd you tell the voters you were going to do when you ran for it? If you win, go do what you said. We told them we were going to do this. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to secure the border. We were going to have work requirements for people in welfare.
You were going to repeal and replace Obamacare. Yeah. That didn't happen in the last administration.
I know. That's because John McCain did the thumbs down. But I do think we will get this done. I think Leader Thune understands that. Speaker Johnson, our entire team. I hope they get a few more dollars of savings on the Senate. I hope Senator Johnson is successful with some of that, but they got to balance their votes too. You got Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski and Ron Johnson and over here, so you got to balance that, just like we had to in the House.
Threading a needle. It sounds very difficult. Yeah. I want to get to former President Biden. Certainly on Judiciary, during his administration, you investigated him and his family and their business dealings, and there were a lot of pardons that came out at the end of the administration. The Justice Department under President Trump is investigating those pardons. There's a whole investigation also that you in the House and also the Senate are doing on his cognitive decline and what might have been done to cover that up. I want you to hear from former President Clinton. You might have heard this already. CBS Sunday Morning when he was asked about the mental fitness for President Biden.
I had never seen him and walked away thinking he can't do this anymore. He was always on top of his brief.
You never saw any cognitive decline?
So I didn't know anything about any of this. I saw President Biden not very long ago, and I thought he was in good shape.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, that's not what the American people saw. Look, we all got common sense. We all saw it. In the left, I read Tapper's book last week because I had to fly to Iowa and back and forth and had time to read it. It's like, look, I always say this: the left has a template, and they follow it all the time. The left will tell a lie. Joe Biden's just fine. Well, the whole world saw, particularly during the debate. In fact, they knew he wasn't just fine because after the debate, they changed their candidate.
And he dropped out, yeah.
Right. So the left will tell a lie. The mainstream media will report the lie. Big tech will amplify the lie. And then when you tell the truth, they call you a racist. Or they'll call you something else. They'll attack you personally. They'll come at you. They'll say, they'll attack Fox News. They'll attack anything conservative when you're pointing out the truth. But after some time, we'll be proven accurate. And then by that point, they're on to the next lie, and the process repeats. So it's a template they follow, a process they follow all the time. They tried to do the same thing with Joe Biden. Even Jake Tapper now admits they were covering up. It was a lie.
But what do you want to do when you're in the Oversight Committee? You're investigating. You want to talk to members of his administration. The Senate even wants to talk to former Vice President Harris and the cabinet.
Yeah.
What's the goal here?
Well, Chairman Comer is running the investigation on the House side. Again, we'll see what we get. I think some of these guys, if you bring them in, like Rossetti, Klain, Zients, these key people who were around President Biden and some of the people around the First Lady. Will they claim executive privilege? Probably. Mm-hmm. Are you going to get a whole lot from them? I think, unless you're going to have someone come forward and say, okay, I'm going to become like a whistleblower and just spill the beans. We all knew he had no clue what was going on.
Mm-hmm. But what does that lead to?
I don't think.
Even if you have subpoenas and all these people,
I think maybe all it could, in the end, probably it can accomplish this is that it alerts the country we just don't want this to happen again. Like so many times that we've seen actions from what the end of the Obama administration and then some of the things we've seen the Justice Department do, and then what we saw during the Biden administration. We want to stop it from happening again, and sometimes the best way to do that is for Congress to do our oversight, which we're constitutionally required to do, get the facts to the American people, and in detail, as much detail as we can, and then you just go from there.
What about the pardons that they're looking into? And they say that the president couldn't have known about some of these things. There were thousands of them, and then there's family members.
He certainly knew
Hunter Biden.
He certainly knew about his family members.
Can anything be done about those? Those are pretty hard to overturn, aren't they?
They are, and the pardon power is exclusive right of the presidency. It is the president has that, and it's really broad, and he can pardon pretty much whoever he darn well wants. So now the uniqueness of these are that they have this time frame on them. They go back for anything he may have done when I think about Hunter Biden. So that's a little unique. So I think there's maybe some things we can look at there. I think the big takeaway is he told us he wasn't going to do it and then did it. And he just lied to the country. So I'm not going to pardon Hunter Biden. I'm not going to pardon my family. And then he did. Maybe even a bigger issue is pardoning the pardons on all the people in the January 6th committee, which I think sort of underlines what many of us thought that committee was totally political. Didn't do what it was supposed to do, didn't give us all the information. One of the things we're looking at is that the January 6th committee did it. There were 26 confidential human sources at the Capitol on January 6th. Confidential human source is a fancy name for spy, informants that were there. Some of them were actually asked to be there by the FBI. So the fundamental first question is, what's the FBI doing having spies at a First Amendment protected political rally? So they did. 17 went in restricted space. They weren't authorized to do so. 4 went in the Capitol. They weren't authorized to do so. I want to know about these guys. How long have they worked? What were they paid? Was any of their testimony used to convict American citizens? I think that's pretty important. So we're focusing on the Judiciary Committee on getting information about those 26 individuals.
There's a lot going on for you right now, even though it's almost summer.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Congressman Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, member of the House Oversight Committee. Great to have you on.
Good to be with you, Dave.